What's needed? All right. Okay. I'll promote myself. Thank you, Stefan. You ready? Yes. Okay. All right. We will call the Monday, March the 6th, 2023, Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors budget meeting number 2 to order. Roll call. Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
Supervisor Day. Supervisor Ayers.
Here.
Supervisor Lyons.
Here.
And Supervisor McDaniel's here as well. Opening comments. As chair, I'd just like to, number one, thank the staff and each department, and thank the finance committee, Mr. Lyons and Mr. Lewis for their hard work on the budget. I know that is extremely difficult and painful at times, but certainly appreciate what y'all are about to present to us. Mr. Suter, do you have any comments?
I've got a bunch.
All right, we'll let you go, and then if finance committee has any comments before we turn over to Mr. Harris.
Okay. All right. Again, thank you all. Tonight's our first presentation of the draft 2024 budget. As is always the case, the budget document we'll be going over as a result, as you mentioned, of a great deal of work over the past several months by internal departments, constitutional officers, external agencies, and of course, the finance committee. Ashton and I followed our now standard process of meeting with internal department heads and constitutional officers, adjusting budgets where we could, based on history and demonstrated need. Then we took the initial draft budget to the finance committee for further review. And as is typically the case, the gap between anticipated revenues and requested expenditures presents a significant challenge at this point at approximately $2.4 million. The good news is overall revenues are good with an aggregate increase of $1,443,540. And that's mainly driven by sales, meals, and lodging. Factored in is also an equalized real estate tax rate of 61 cents to the 100, penny rate of 61, down from 74. Unfortunately, though, personal property is predicted to be down over last year. The Commissioner of Revenue's office has noted a fairly steep decline in vehicle values according to NADA. In a few minutes, Ashton's going to go over the budgets in more detail, but for now, some larger draft expenditure drivers at this point include the following. The draft budget includes a assumed 12.5% increase in health insurance based on recent estimates from One Digital. Actual rates will not be known until quotes are obtained. But based on our experience rate this past year, that's what they've come back with. We found that out about the middle of the week last week, or early last week. The FY23 budget for health insurance in the general fund is $1,444,000 and covers 130 policies. And the FY24 budget is 137 policies for a total of $1,356,300. And the total difference is $212,300. I think we might have those numbers reversed. We notified external agencies which utilize our insurance are awaiting any changes to their budgets that they may have. Also included in the draft budget is a 7% increase in salaries. The raise is expected to be mandated for constitutional officers and compensation board employees. And that is as the result of what we can see in the state budget. As shown, the budget also includes a 7% raise for county staff and non-comp board or locally funded comp board positions. That total local cost is about $560,000. Fire and rescue, there's about a $505,000 increase. The main drivers are the increase associated with going to 24/7 service in the current year that was recently approved, and that's 3 positions, and a new request for a second training officer that we'll talk about in a little bit. Additionally, of course, the 7% salary and insurance increases. Also, the city of Lexington contribution went up. We'll get into more detail in a little bit. And the Fire and Rescue Committee, I have to commend them. They've worked extremely hard on a recommendation involving requests from the Fire and Rescue Association. Jail, as shown tonight, the total county share for jail costs is up $493,000. That includes 4 new vehicles. However, as a commission member, I am working with the Jail Finance Committee, and we are bringing this number down. I don't know how far we'll be able to get it down, but we're bringing it down. Matter of fact, we've got a new budget we were looking at today that it's already come down some as a result of that, but didn't have time to get it in here. $247,000 increase in solid waste. A large percentage of that is the increase in our hauling contract and also increase in tipping fee. $90,000 increase in health and welfare. The good news is while DSS and CSA went down, but there is a mandated increase in the Virginia Department of Health that's shifting more of the cost to localities from the Virginia Department of Health. And there's also the new request of $17,000 for the stretcher van transport program. And get more into that in a little bit. There's a $222,000 increase in revenue sharing with Lexington. We estimate that at a 10% increase. When we see that, it means that our overall taxes or meals and lodging and things that go into that are doing well when we see that increase. There's also the largest increase is $1.2 million request from the Rockbridge County Public Schools. Dr. Thompson notified me today that they expect to provide the board with a categorical estimate of need after their meeting next Tuesday. I confirmed that. Hold on just a second. Hey, Ashton, we have to leave that open.
No, we don't, but that's been an ongoing battle.
I did confirm with Dr. Thompson that they will be receiving we will be receiving an official categorical estimate of need after the school board's meeting next Tuesday evening. And I did confirm that the $1.2 million, and I'm using rough numbers here, obviously, it has not changed. Expenses not included at this point are transfers to the capital fund. The board can appropriate funds for projects as they become ready through the year. Payment of the Floyd S.K. bond and new human services building are unknown at this time, and whether or not it's doubtful to even be in this next year. It'll probably be in the following year, as far as the way it would be set up with the borrowing. And as recently presented by Davenport, VPSA offers flexibility in their bond payment schedule to keep the county's overall debt payment schedule level. Changes to volunteer fire and rescue agency payments are not included at this point. And again, they're still under discussion with the Public Safety Committee. They do have some recommendations. We've just about got that ironed out. They're going to be sending that to the Finance Committee. And the Finance Committee's got a meeting later this week.
When you're talking about cost associated with the bond for the Floyd SK, there shouldn't be any operational cost to it.
No, we're just talking about in our budget, we've got the debt service payment schedule.
Yes.
So we put that in. That's what we're putting.
Okay.
That we weren't talking about ops.
Okay.
Yep. With regard to external agencies, mostly 501c3s, the Finance Committee has opted to leave any increased requests in this budget for the full board to consider. When we conclude initial budget discussions after Ashton presents, we can move toward the budget schedule, which is going to take some discussion as well. And just a caveat there, in that this is an assessment year, a 30-day public hearing notice is required in the event that the board wishes to consider increasing the effective real estate tax rate after equalization by more than 1%. So as noted, the current budget calculates a rate of 61 pennies down from 74 based on the increase in real estate valuation. We'll give a fuller explanation in the discussion after the budget presentation. From this point, Ashton's going to walk you through the budget document, starting with a general overview of revenues and then on to expenditures. He's going to work off the screen, as you can see, so that anyone present can follow along or present or online or viewing later. We provided the board with hard copies of the budget summary to make notes if you wish. And also, as always, please feel free to stop us and ask questions at any point along the way, and we'll do our best to answer them. If we can at that time, we will be honest and let you know, and we'll get back with you as quickly as we can and make sure that information is shared with everyone. And also, please understand that the Finance Committee recommendation is just that at this point. It's a recommendation. Any board member is welcome and encouraged to make suggestions in any area, whether it be to reduce or increase. And given that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Ashton to get started unless there are initial questions. I'm skipping the, I'm sorry, Finance Committee.
Let's let the Finance Committee, if they have any thoughts or anything you'd like to share.
First, I'd just like to say it's early, and we're hampered a little bit by the state because they haven't produced the budget, and so we're not aware of what monies will be coming and what mandatory non-funded mandates are coming. What you'll see is everything that's been requested, and hopefully we'll get some input and feelings. And don't be, the Board of Equalization did a great job doing their task to get it down to where it is, but that's not equal across the board. It seems the value of homes between $200,000 and $400,000 were hit the hardest. So even with the equalized rate, those homeowners are going to see an increase in their taxes. Of course, people that have land and land use will see a decrease in theirs, and people with the high-end homes, which are will probably see the least of an increase because the values of those homes did not jump to 20 to 40% that other places did. So we're prepared to do what we have to do, and as Mr. Shooter said, please don't hesitate to give us your input. If there's something that you want to see or don't want to see, it's always helpful to hear before we start changing things.
I just had one question. As the initial was presented to the Finance Committee, it didn't have fire and rescue, as I understood, any request for that, as the Public Safety Committee was still working through that.
Correct.
But this sheet showing a number, so I'm not sure where. I just, maybe I'm missing something.
Oh, well, it's basically it's level.
Well, it's up 500,000.
That's the total.
That's the total. Remember,
I don't, obviously, evidently, that's not.
all right, well, I'll explain.
All
The $505,000 is what I went over earlier. That's the career staff. That's the increase for the new positions. That's all the 7% salaries, et cetera, et cetera. Your number is an aggregated number there. It includes all of that, but it doesn't have the volunteer association request in there yet.
So what we were presented at the Finance Committee had this in it.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. You have an extra pen. One by your laptop.
Go.
All right, Mr. Harris.
The shot at that is that we can expect that still to rise.
Excuse me.
We
Yeah.
can expect that number to rise some still. That
Yes, and then that just depends on what the revenue source is as well. For example, currently right now, the paper call cost of $10 per call, that comes out of the cost recovery fund. So
won't
it depends on what the what source of revenue is.
Okay. Starting with local revenue, with real property taxes, we're looking at a decrease of $326,638. Public Service Corporation taxes, keeping its proposed level at this point.
And we're just gonna hit
We-
the biggest ones here. We're not gonna go through the whole list.
With the public service corporations, we won't know the equalization ratio until July. Right now, our equalization ratio for public service corporations is about 78%, but hopefully that goes back up to 100.
Mr. Harrison, which form are you on? 'Cause we have a list of forms in our,
Yeah, help
Sheriff
us
file.
get to what you're looking at,
Yeah.
because we can't see those.
If you see, it says FY24 budget. It's probably on the bottom because it's the longest title. I have it in PDF and Excel. Depends on how you prefer to look at it.
The General fund draft.
Yes, it should say three.
Did you find it?
I don't think it's on the hard copies that we have. I think you're referring to maybe a
Oh,
SharePoint document. That's
Yeah,
what I'm
I
saying.
don't see that one. I don't see where it says real estate on there. at the top. Come on, this one. Maybe I'll just.
that way. And sheriff file. But that's the printout.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Okay.
Look at that closer. So the Public Service Corporation taxes. Again, our equalization ratio, hopefully that's because of the reassessment, will go back up to 100%. We're currently at a little bit over 78%. And that's the value at which we can, the percent of which we can attach, tax their valuations. And we also won't know their valuations. They don't notify the commissioner until September. So that's kind of a little bit of a wild card on public service corporations. Personal property taxes is down 732,000.
Did the finance committee request a NADA?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
What was the change?
It depended on the vehicle, and I'm trying to think
What was the overall fleet change?
I think it was it 20% that David
It's
said?
pretty significant, yeah.
Values were down 20%.
Yeah.
The other direction. Machinery and tools down 42,000.
I'm sorry, Ashton, just because last year it went up 13%. So in 1 year, it's a change of 33%.
We were pretty shocked by it. We asked the commissioner to, he ran the numbers, and he's also talking with other counties, commissioners in other counties that are doing spring billings. And that's what they found as well.
Collapse was his word.
Yeah, I think the word he used was collapse.
So one thing we might have to do, we might have to look at equalizing that rate.
And he actually gave us some examples of, just here's a vehicle, and it might have been 50,000 last year, and maybe it's 40,000 now.
Mr. McDaniel, weren't you referring to machinery and tools?
I think he went back. to the
He went to back.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the heavy hitters. On the positive side, we're looking at over almost 1.6 million in increases in the sales, lodging, and meals taxes. Just need to point out auto tags, 141,000 negative. Cigarette taxes, we're looking at a total of 366,000, and that's up 66,000. And emissions tax at 225,000, that's up 25,000. Fines post-COVID, they're starting to go back up. We're estimating $175,000 increase to that. And another positive news with the rising interest rates, we're looking at a 514,000 increase to the interest on our investments, or for a total of 550,000. Going
Type
from
of interest rates are you calculating in there?
those are, I can get the specific numbers from VIP, from what the treasurer had to see her reports.
I just didn't know if it was, you know, if it's something that was pulled like at the start of the year, something was pulled in the last couple of weeks, something that you're factoring in another 0.5% increase before July.
No, we have not.
I think that's something that one of those questions we're gonna have to get back with you on, because some of this information does come from the treasurer's office.
And those are the big changes to the local revenue. Going to the next tab on state revenue, the largest changes because of the 7% proposed increase from for the constitutional officers and their employees. We're looking at 600,000 total increase from state revenue, largely driven by, for the most part, the reimbursements from the comp board. The school resource officer grant, we did go ahead and budget. We did get the grant for, is in there for the Mr. Norris. That was renewed, so that's 100% funded again. And but until we hear otherwise, we're budgeting as we're contracted to do, to pick up 45% of those 3 additional school resource officers. Federal revenue unchanged, just a minor change. Other revenue, no changes. And right now, we're not proposing anything from reserves at this point in time. So that's down 466,000.
I'm sorry, actually, tell me that again. We're not,
It hasn't,
we're on other revenue. No.
yeah, where it says reserve, it's the next tab over.
Okay.
At this point in time, we're not recommending anything from reserves. Moving on to expenses and the supervisors, there was a.
Question, I'm sorry, I don't mean
Yes.
to interrupt you, but just, and if you prefer us to hold our question.
No. I don't,
All
please.
Where are we tracking with revenues to this point for this fiscal year? Are we looking at surplus at the end of the year?
Yes.
Any idea of what that may be?
Well, we haven't calculated all of them added up, but you know, it's in all those lines. You can see the estimate through December for all those revenues. I think that's in that sheet, isn't it?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah. So some of those are not necessarily going to track month to month. For example, you got a down season in the lodging in some cases, and they'll have a boon in the fall and a boon in the spring on some things. Others are kind of either one or two payments. So, you know, you might have gotten most of your payment in the fall. So that one would be, it is what it is. calculate for next year. But what we could do is we could go in and just, for rough numbers, try to pull out those anomalies that are just one-time things. And we could calculate 6 months worth. And we probably actually go in and calculate 7
Well, we kind
or
of,
8 months.
Can we
Oh,
just
we
use
kinda-
by compare it from the year before?
yeah, that's what we did. That's with the big master
Yeah.
spreadsheets. That's how we,
So, I mean, because
Anticipate.
payments would be similar at the similar time, and so if we're up X amount, couldn't we extrapolate that maybe we have more of a surplus?
Yeah, we can do that for this year. I mean, we can tell you about where we think you're going to end up the year as far as revenues. There's no guarantee on that, but
I was just wondering with trends and projections in the revenue figures, if we were being conservative on our outlook there, or if we were stretching it all the way to what we think the surplus is going to be.
no, I don't think, I think I mean, we're optimistic on I shouldn't say optimistic, not either pessimistic or not optimistic on the revenue projections for the sales, mills, and lodging taxes. The big concern of mine is that, and we can't predict if there's going to be a recession or not, because if we do end up in a recession in FY24, we can expect those sales, mills, and lodgings to not meet projections.
we're trying to answer your question, we're trying to budget as accurately as we can. In other words, we're not going too far either way. We're not trying not to get on the bleeding edge. And again, I thought your question was about how much we can anticipate in there being
This year,
surplus this year.
Well, yeah, because that's an indicator that maybe our budget wasn't accurate last year.
Well, in
If
some
you have-
cases it wasn't. Yeah. In
I
some
mean, if you
cases,
have a great, I mean, if you budgeted $10 and all of a sudden you got 15, your
Yeah.
budget wasn't very accurate. I
Right.
mean, because you got that $5. And that's what I was wondering is how we're looking at surplus in relation to how we're budgeting for next year's revenue.
we're looking at all that. We've got a spreadsheet that we try to use in some cases. In some cases, it's a 5-year average?
yes.
Yeah, a 5-year average. But in some cases, you can't really take that average because there's anomalies in there, such
Right.
as the COVID years and that type of thing. So we try to trim that out and look at our most recent trend.
And for Monday's regular board meeting, you'll have the revenue and expenses for 8 months presented.
Any other questions before we go to expenditures? And what we've done is we sat down and we tried to give you the main drivers in every one of these budgets, and we'll go through them, as quickly as we can, but we want to kind of give those main drivers.
So I won't, because this applies to most every department. We did budget in a 7% increase in salaries and a 12.5% increase in health insurance. So I won't mention those in each budget. We also took a closer look at the telecommunications, electric, water, and sewer. In some budgets, they've gone up, some they've gone down. Asked Becky to look at those closely, and she did. So we hopefully a lot more accurate numbers for those amounts.
I know you said you're not going to go over the salary figures, but you budgeted 7% across the board,
That's correct. Finance committee asked.
but not every position is a comp board position.
Correct. And we're talking about we're talking about everything across the board. That's
Everyone.
what the finance committee wanted to look at to start with.
That's a
With
starting
the
point.
comp board recommending 7%, is that what has to be done, or can you give a 3% and you just forfeit some state funding? How does that work?
Why would you do that?
But if you wanted to be fair across the board to everybody, I mean, if you can't afford a 7% raise to everyone, maybe you can afford a 3% raise to everyone. You just give up some state funding.
State funded employees that would be entitled to it.
I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm just asking the question if it can be done.
Is it
Or,
similar
Local,
to-
local funding is up to the Board of Supervisors.
or if you give the comp board position 7%, but if you're not a comp board position, you only get 3 or something. I mean, can you do that? I know that doesn't sound fair. I'm just asking the question if it can be done or not.
Yeah, that's why I say the board has full authority over any local funding that's applied towards salaries.
The constitutional officer cannot give the full amount that the state recommends, but you just lose it.
So again, this is a starting point. And then we've calculated, or I say we, Ashton's calculated and his staff has calculated 3%, 5%, 6%, 7%, but this budget includes the 7%.
Do we have that similar to the schools? Can you
Yes,
send us
it's
one
on the
of-
SharePoint. You'll see a salaries spreadsheet. On the supervisor's budget, not much of a change. We just, there's a little bit, it's overall down. Small salary was budgeted a little bit incorrectly last year or for this year. And there's an increase in advertising. For the county administrator, salaries, but also a request for to replace his laptop. The county attorney, an increase of 20,000. Our professional services is in there. IT, included in the budget is an additional position at 65,000 per year. And some of the increases in contractual services are a result of, we previously funded some things like the website Civic Live and everything with ARPA funds. But now that's being funded with general fund dollars.
The reason the county attorney professional services is up 400%.
Yes, that's the professional services and last year it was the same request. It's for external
Support with
external
litigation.
support with a different, if you've got a major lawsuit or anything like that. And Ms. Huffman had put the same amount in, maybe even 25,000 last year, I think, increase. Not knowing what she was going to need, but just wanting to have it if they needed it, if she needed it. And I think last year that was reduced, which is why you see an increase again this year. And the board said, if you need it, we'll fund it.
I mean, that could be something that you, if needed, at a particular time, you just pull out of reserves rather than putting it in the budget.
Yes, and that's exactly what we did last year.
As the board's aware, we made some changes with central accounting, human resources, and the finance department. There's a decrease in central accounting of $50,000, moving positions around. Human resources, so you'll see them, they're up 91,000. Again, we added a position and we did some shifting from central accounting. That was down 51,000.
Essentially a wash, we moved it from one budget to the other.
What position was that? Was that type somebody for?
Yeah, that was the, I forget what we called it when it was in central accounting, but this is the HR assistant. We kind of retitled it, recategorized it, and moved it from one department to another.
And I want to point out the employee wellness program, this 12,500, our total health insurance premium, whatever that amount ends up being, is reduced by $12,500 if we have for using that towards employee wellness, which Heidi has been doing. Reassessment is zeroed out, so that's 221,000 savings.
Obviously, it's complete this year.
Land use, just increase in postage rates. Commissioner revenue, the largest increase is budgeting for the tax stamps for the cigarette tax.
We've got a little bit better bead on it this year since we know, we've,
What we're doing,
pushing a year into it.
so he has better estimates. The treasurer has requested an additional position that would be 100% local funded, and that is at a salary of 34,000. And is my sense that the finance committee, we included in the budget. I think that's one of the things the finance committee wants to go talk about a little bit more in detail, and maybe talk with Betty about.
Also, they had some computer upgrades there in that budget.
Thank you. Finance, for my department, you'll see this also with some other departments. For the contract services, professional fee, audit expenses, we just put it all in one category, professional fees, so that the value hasn't changed, or the dollar amount. I am requesting 2,550 additional for travel and education. In the past, with my department, only one person would go to training per year. And I'm hoping to be able to include myself, send all staff to relevant training. The registrar, she does have some increases. The rent on some of the polling places have gone up. Their costs have gone up, and so everything from electric, water, as their costs go up, they pass on. They've asked for a relatively small increase in their rent. And she's budgeting some extra for the voting machine supplies and repairs. We've made a presumption, because we haven't, that the electoral board, the state electoral board, will follow the same suit as the compensation board, and if the compensation board is doing a 7%, we're assuming that there'll be an increase for them as well.
Is that compensation, the third line, is that accurate at 47% increase?
Yes, thank you for, she's asking for the assistant registrar to have increase to 44,000, and she provided, as an example, Lexington's assistant registrar, I think it's higher than that. Even I think she said it was like 47. Oh, here we go. Say Lexington is doing 46 to 49,000 for that same position. And she does want to, I should point that out, give the election officials a pay increase. Moving on to the circuit court. You'll see an increase for the records preservation grant. That is a grant, and that's 100% funded by the state. That's been a really great program. And they're also asking for new chairs for their workstations. Circuit court is largely unchanged. Small increase, but it's not anything major. General district court, I want to point out that they've asked for an increase in their supplements. They would like to go from to $3,000 for full-time employees and $1,500 for part-time employees. The current amount is $1,500 funded this year. The finance committee recommend that we keep that personnel complement supplement. It's not a mandate, and they keep it level. And that's the same is true with the juvenile and domestic court to keep the personnel complement level. With court security, they put in, there is an increase for the security system. That's largely the camera. They have, they did mention that I should say cameras. As the sheriff explained to me when he was showing me their system, it's old, but it's working, but they had to replace some
components.
That might have been 2022.
Yep.
It seems to be working. You don't want to change it because it's working, and then all of a sudden it goes out, and you just have to get a new one. So they just want to cover themselves if something burns out, instead of having to come and ask for an additional appropriation. The Commonwealth Attorney, he really asked us to mention he liked his $1,250 put back in for the purchase of equipment for like things that could go wrong, like needing a new printer, a printer goes out, use a computer or something like that. Used to be just a standard line item. It was taken out because of concerns about the budget overall. And so he's just asking for that line to be put back. The victim witness salary increases. Otherwise, no change. For the sheriff, you see a large jump here. We're getting rid of these line items, the school resource officer and the domestic violence against women. And we're combining that all into one line item instead of breaking out different deputies. So part of that increase is a decrease in these two being added up here. I want to point out to the sheriff, he's only getting a 7% increase. It's a 9.22% shows here because we did not budget accurately for FY20 for the current fiscal year. But he is not getting 9%. He's only getting 7% over his current salary. We're going to get better at, we're trying to get better at workers' comp. we get, our workers' comp is audited every year, and we'll get audited and have to pay Vacor money because we underreported on our application how much our total salaries.
This right size it, $68,000
That's a good
increase
word.
right size
That's
it.
a good term. Somehow electricity, water, and fuel got missed in this year's budgets. So when you see that increase, it's because it wasn't budgeted in the current fiscal year. You might recall, we did take care of that. And the board amended the current year's budget to include.
I'm actually personally kind of pleased that we found as few mistakes as we did with what we were dealing with last year when you had me trying to work through the budget and Ashton coming in at the tail end. So but
Oh,
we're
I-
finding a few things.
Yeah, I don't doubt. Maybe if you happen to notice a typo, whether it's a typo in the, especially in the numbers or something that just seems off, please point that out to me. Police equipment, that's probably the single largest increase. Going to their justification, that covers all their stuff that we expect our deputies to have on their persons.
So the one thing I want to point out here is that we added the 3 school resource officers
Yes.
in the current year, mid-year, by accepting the grant, and our county's portion of these costs and ongoing is 45% of those costs. So you've seen some increase there.
I'm cautiously optimistic. DCGS is a really good to work with. I'm cautiously optimistic that because we're not, our sheriff isn't the only one struggling to hire deputies. That kicked in, of course, July 1. He's bringing on 2, I believe, here now, like today. So it's taking them that long to find people, and this is true with departments all across. But since DCJS already has that funding available and it's been appropriated, it's not taken away from them. Hopefully what they'll do is say, okay, year 2, you really don't have to pay 40% because you still have banked all this other money over here, and they're going to let us.
Is there precedent for that? Do they do that?
Yes,
That
it's,
happened
yeah.
before?
and it's kind of what they did with the, we were supposed to pick up 100% of Deputy Norris's salary this year. And then all of a sudden they called Tony and said, apply for a grant and we'll fund it 100%. So he applied for a grant and they funded it 100% because they're sitting on this money. But I think they really won't make that determination until they get their accounting fiscal years. We probably wouldn't know that until probably July or August, because they have to wait till they reconcile all their books.
Okay.
The DBHDS assessment grant, training grant, and this new TDO overtime, those are all 100% covered costs. And that funds 2 deputies. The training, it's a wash. We don't, as we bring in revenue, we will amend the budget. And this is a new program, this DBTA's TDO, and that's to help pay for overtime for other deputies with their transports to people in mental health crisis. So it's a lot of time involved with deputies transporting persons, and so they have this new program where they're paying for those overtime costs. So that's been really nice. And now we can specifically talk about fire and rescue. Again, we've added, this budget does include the 3 firefighter that the board has approved already for, and it also includes an additional training position. Chief Ramsey did note that even if the Floyd SK, which it won't be ready, he has made preparations to teach offsite those classes.
And that's linked to also link to firefighter training. Right now it's just EMT. So he just requested that the increases to the budget is $65,000 for that.
And another notable increase is Chief Ramsey's expectations for the increase in the fire and rescue contract with Lexington.
That's up 67.
Where's that?
What is, I was trying to read the justification. What's the justification for the additional trainer?
Yeah. For the additional trainer.
Yeah, I can
I
give you.
can bring that up.
My understanding of the justification is that the program has been hoping to transition to training both fire and rescue. We had to start somewhere. So now we're getting to the point where we've produced graduated students from there and then hired to the county. So the plan has always been to
But not, have we done fire yet?
No.
Yeah. so
broaden
is
that
a-
program,
yeah.
but that's what this position would allow us to do, is continue the good works that training ground is, and is helping us help ourselves.
I'll
But Spencer may have different understanding.
No, that's, you're right.
You're right on.
That's all right, Ashton. Just get back.
Okay. No, no,
You got it.
no, that was,
Thank you.
and I think, how many have they hired already? At least 2, right?
Yeah, they've hired a couple that have been through our training, and that's part of the goal is to give students coming out of school, high school students, a career path, and also help with when we need to fill jobs here too.
Which
And
is
give a
really
career
helpful. Learning that how many people just were no-shows in their last round of interviews.
Yeah. We're having a hard time hiring, but
Being
we're
ghosted.
doing better than
Is that the word?
some folks, and I would take this moment to thank the board for adjusting the salaries when you did. That helped bail us out.
COVID-19 department, hopefully that this is just an artifact and it'll go away beginning with your FY25 budget. Consolidated dispatch.
I'll take the next few of them if you want, because I sit on the dispatch board and also the jail board and juvenile detention. So dispatch is a 5% COLA. The cost of living increase that they're under the city of Lexington is their fiscal agent, and that's what they're looking at. That's $77,000, and then a 20% increase in health insurance is what was shown. Professional services is down 42,000 as we're wrapping up the consulting costs for the new CAD. Computer software is down. Software costs are down due to migrating to new CAD. Telephone is up $46,000, and that's due to next generation 911, which is a state mandate. We're going to get about half of that back from the state, and hopefully the same next year or the following year. But then, as many things do, it shifts to 100% local cost. Communication equipment is up 55,000. This kind of lumped in. It's not necessarily communication, but it's communication system support in a new uninterrupted power supply, UPS. That's about 40,000, and then a new server for the security camera security camera system. That's 15,000. Lease and rent is up $9,000, and that's a radio system. The tower lease spaces that various places through the county we lease space, and those are the escalators that are built into those contracts. And the county share for all of their increases. These are the complete increases. Our share of those increases is 59.329%. And we just received a revised budget today, and this number's gone down around 27,000 than what was reported to the finance committee. So we're making a little progress there. Any questions on dispatch? Not, Ashton, go to the jail, please. As shown, the total jail operational costs are up $553,000. County share is as shown is $358,000 higher. And like I said, we're working on this. We've already started to bring it down some. Much of the increase is due to the 7% coming from the state, but there are other numbers, including contracted services and vehicle replacements. There's a couple contracted services that are new and different in the Medico contract, the contracted medical services, and also food service. And so Jim Howitz and I, city manager of Lexington, comprise the finance committee working on that. And so we've met with the superintendent once, and then we have some back and forth via email. So we're gradually bringing some of this down. And then just skipping through there, I'll go to the next one. Slight increase in juvenile probation in their furniture. And then I'll jump to juvenile detention. Juvenile detention, it's kind of an oxymoron here. It's actually down in our budget $31,000. That's because last year we budgeted a worst case scenario in case we were taking federal guests that were juveniles that were illegal aliens, but the feds paid us for a certain number of beds. I think it was 24 beds that they paid for, whether they used them or not. That situation became untenable. So we budgeted worst case scenario in case in the current year we were to end that federal program and stop taking those kids, in which case we would locally, all the partners would have to pony up more money because we're not getting the federal funds. So that decision was just made here recently within the past 45 days. So ours is a very low percentage of that overall budget because we're in it with Harrisburg, Rockingham, Stanton, Augusta, Waynesboro. Ours is a fairly low percentage. And the other agencies, they opted to blend this in over 3 years to make the increase over 3 years. So even though we're getting less money from the feds, our budget is actually going down because we budgeted at the top end last year, if that makes any sense. So now this budget will go up over the next 2 years. It will go back up to basically what it was last year. Sorry to spend so much time on that. That's a hard one to explain.
Building inspection, Kenny needs to buy a whole new set of books because they are updated. The building inspection books, and it's a library.
Yeah, it's their code books that are updated about every 2 years.
They're not online, they're hard copy?
I think they have to keep a physical.
Yeah, you gotta keep the subscription up.
A physical copy.
You have to have a physical copy, you just can't do it online.
It's my understanding they're supposed to have a physical copy
Yeah, I think they
for people to review if they have,
To review.
if a contractor is questioning or has questions. ENS salaries, that's stormwater. Special enforcement, largely salaries increases.
a little less than $2,000 in uniforms, ammo, training, and travel in addition as well.
Thank you. Other enforcement, Line of duty, that's our insurance. And so we're budgeting based on what the rate is, time, the number of volunteers. SPCA is up. This Valley ASAP, that's the new request that was made to the board. And that would be an equal share. The finance committee actually pointed out that Rockbridge might be getting a good deal if we agree to help fund this position because the shares are equal. But when you look at the finance committee noticed it was based on a usage, then our shares should be quite a bit more because we're a good, Rockbridge produces quite a bit for that program in a number of cases.
I think we were also inquiring to try to get some sense of what the other localities were thinking about
Yes.
also, not, yes, just to
Correct.
add on. If we can find that out, I don't know that we can or can't, but it's something we thought.
Yeah, everybody's at a different stage of their budget. So I've got that as a note to
They might be
follow
waiting
up.
for us.
The other thing too, there, the SPCA is up 16,000.
Road maintenance is actually down. Solid waste, the largest thing, one of the biggest increases up is our hauling contract, was up 195,000. Tipping fees is up 22,000. Well, as you know, raised the disposal rate. The litter grant, this is a pass through. So we're just going ahead and budget it. There's 14,000 on the revenue side as well.
Where does that go?
That's to help pay for the volunteers and their trash bags and their little pickies. And I think they have an award for and another, what we've also done, we've combined the maintenance. There's a little bit of redundancy we felt over time. So we combined the maintenance of containers and the collection site prep. We dropped this one and added those.
Combined, that's actually down about $2,000.
Since we recently removed a number of dumpsters, do you not think you can decrease the unstaffed sites any?
You mean the cleanup of
Yeah.
the sites? Yeah, the only problem is part of it's was getting eaten up, but there's an increased cost in the actual maintenance contract on the per hour for cleanup. So it's probably going to be a wash, but we can look at that and maybe reduce it some. Because like, for example, Arnold's Valley and they didn't have a ton of cleanup in there anyway. There's a few of them that are pretty consistent. But yeah, we'll look at that.
And this is a good example, like with the purchase of containers, Spencer and Daniel went back and looked a lot more closely in our meetings before presenting it to the board. Looked at it, what kind of containers do we really need? Which ones are damaged and stuff like that. And just want to point that out. That's just one example among many of seeing out with departments and getting that cleaned up, or more accurate, right sizing, I think is the word Spencer used. Grounds and building is basically level. Combined courthouse, mostly got an increase in utility costs. Again, trying to right size that budget, but part of that is also the increase in rates.
What is the percentage of rates? I mean, how much is it going up?
That's one we can get you. I will say this, I'm confident that it would be much higher now if the board would not have approved the energy optimization project down there. Train actually proved out pretty well that we're able to optimize those. For example, well, how do I explain this? If it's unoccupied, we're not heating as much and we're not
Setback.
cool. Yeah.
Setback.
A lot of people are up like 30. I think a lot of people are up considerably more than 10%.
Yeah, I think they're, the rates are up, but we can figure out what they are.
We'll get that. Rockbridge Mill property, no changes. $85 to electricity. Fleet services, big one, fuel. Kind of budget that up also instead of having to come to the board for additional increases. We also have this technology that includes not just, printers and computer or desktop or something that might go down, but also their diagnostic equipment.
What price are you calculating the fuel on?
What do you mean?
Um,
On like a per gallon basis? Or? I'm not sure. We get it from Steve. It fluctuates.
Don't you buy it in bulk right there?
What'd you say?
Doesn't he buy it in bulk?
He
does.
does.
Well, we approved the contract.
Yeah. We buy it in bulk, but it's a kind of an enterprise system out there. He's got to have money to buy it, and then he bills it out to say the schools, sheriff's office, et cetera.
I guess I'm just wondering, $132,000 increase. I mean, fuel prices were up last year as well. So I mean, what's the difference there?
Part of it is if you look at the actual expenditure.
yeah, I should have haven't updated that yet.
That's all right. Ashton, you were fine where you were.
Okay. To date, we've spent, as of December 31st, 214,000. And we're only budgeted for 300,000.
Yeah. See, I think that's part of the answer. It was under budgeted last year.
And as you may recall, in FY22, we had to make some additional appropriations to cover the cost.
Where's the revenue for that? Can we see the revenue coming in?
Yeah, and I want to thank,
Wait, should it be a wash if we're selling it?
Generally, yeah.
Well,
I mean,
Well,
they have some,
70%.
well, they have,
Ours from ourselves because we're funding these other budgets that have to.
Right, it
Buy
might
the
not
gas.
be a wash. If we're only bringing in 30% of the whatever, then it's not a wash. I just want to make sure it isn't.
it's as much of a wash as it can be. That they also have vehicles out there too that they pay for out of this. So, and they use them a lot going out on service calls and that type of thing. But we can do a comparison and dig into it and see how much each.
yeah, if you
agency.
look on the local revenue real quick, switching back, you'll see the charges for the transportation garage. And those are up. You'll see like the school board for the buses and stuff is up, anticipated 88,000, 38,000 for their other vehicles. So we have those broken out.
And those are charge outs for not just the gas and their fuel, but also the parts they use, that type of thing.
And I think Steve does a good job at, because before he gave us that number, he verified like this with whoever's in charge with transportation and stuff over at the school. So he verified, like especially that one,
Steve keeps excellent records.
before giving us that number.
So stay on that page there for a minute.
Okay.
So 844, is that the budget amount for this year?
No, sorry, the budget amount this year is 690,000. As of December, we've only received 242,000, but some,
Part of that's aging of the invoicing going out.
and some of it is, some of the reconciliation hasn't occurred for the revenue side of things, has not, probably should have shown up in December, but it hasn't yet.
It did, the finance committee did have that on their list of things that just check into a little closer. So we'll take those concerns. Check it out. The school bus did run out of fuel. Rockbridge Vaz the other day, so I know they're doing the best they can.
Oh,
It wasn't from lack of fuel.
That's true. It's like a fuel in that particular vehicle, not at the girl. Substitute driver. Something else in that.
I'm sorry, Ashton. Go ahead.
Under health, as Spencer pointed out, we do have an increase in our share of the health department as the state put more, a couple of years ago, started putting more of that share onto the localities. And this that's the Valley area, that's that new request they had for the stretcher. And the increase in rats is, I believe, is my understanding of their budget request. It's a one-time larger increase to help provide matching funds for a federal grant to purchase 2 new vehicles.
But wasn't that, so they could have a stretcher transport as well? Wasn't it like 2 or 3 nonprofits that wanted to do stretcher transport?
I know they created another nonprofit just for stretcher transport.
I mean, do we need that? I mean, do we need multiple agencies providing the same service?
We don't need duplication of service.
There was, I do think there was a size that one of those vehicles did not have adequate, I don't know, for people that can't move at all. There was a difference. Am I wrong? Am I remembering this wrong, Ashton?
Yes, they asked for a stretcher that could, and they did look at a used stretcher yes, that's more mobile. The kind you'd see the professional, our EMTs, our professionals using to help transport patients to their, well, actually inside their homes.
My recollection is they underestimated what a stretcher would cost too.
And they thought it would come with their stretcher van. You know.
Sorry.
Well, I think, yeah, from my understanding, they're 2 separate requests. RATS itself is needing or is requesting funds for more vans, just more vehicles.
Correct.
Then there's another nonprofit, as Dr. Lyons said, that was created to do the stretcher transport. And a federal grant was applied for to obtain the stretcher van, which was awarded. One of 3 things here in Rockbridge, which is good for us. But yes, the stretcher is still needed. So they're requesting funds for a stretcher for the new stretcher van through this new nonprofit. My understanding from the finance committee is we were digging in a little more to the RATS portion of that, about the extra vans and the cost share that might exist, as RATS is not just serving Rockbridge. You know, it's other jurisdictions as well as Allegheny and Bath counties, I believe.
Did they
So
ask those localities? for it?
that's our question. I'm not sure yet. Those are the kinds of questions that we were looking to get some
And
more
then
information.
decisions can be made once we get the answers. But
Yeah.
I believe we felt Rockbridge shouldn't put it.
Well, should that be the recommendation and the board approve that, can that be considered a one-time expense as well?
Yeah, it would be.
Right,
You talking about the stretcher or the RATS vehicles?
probably both.
Yes, I think you're correct. I think, yes, they want, you see a one-time large bump in their request because this particular year, they're asking for a little bit more funds to help with their matching grant that would go back down in FY '25. And you're correct, this is just for the purchase of a stretcher, not asking for anything for operating costs.
My recommendation would be just that if you were to do that, I would make it a one time and make it very clear in the budget that that's, it's not an annual request, and you could use reserve to fund.
Do we have a number across the board for the whole budget? How many of these exist, these one-time bumps in the budget? Not 2 million, right?
No,
No.
No 2 million.
no, yeah, we can look at that.
We-
There's not that many, but we can go back and
We're already
look at this.
pulling some out. I mean, the
Yeah.
CIP stuff.
That's my, generally, the way we've approached it in the past, yes, ma'am, is the first pass is this, and then we're going and doing exactly those kinds of things.
Finding
Seeing what's one-time expenditures, and maybe that's not necessarily in the budget, but might be funded otherwise, and then we come back and see what the board wants to do.
I think to put it in my words, the finance committee looked through these things, and there's some things that weren't recommended and some things that were trimmed up a little bit, but in like these 501c3s, that type of thing, to bring it to the full board, have these discussions, and then get an idea from the full board of you're leaning on these things, and then we can go back and, as Supervisor Lewis says, start looking at what we could adjust.
Hopefully we'll get from you, if there's anything you absolutely refuse to see.
When you got a
Let us know, or
when you got a $2.4 million
That's
gap,
right.
I can see giving any increases.
well,
I mean, it's not going to amount to
No.
a lot of money in that 2.4 million, but you still got that 2.4 million.
exactly, but hopefully we'll get from you. We got 2.4 million, but I want this held harmless, this held harm. Otherwise, I think we should be, if you're giving us open reign, then we can go through everything. Do what we have to do.
I see your posture.
I mean, I think they're
David's-
looking
I
for some
think-
direction from the three of us. I've given mine. I think y'all
I
have
can
yours.
tell you have. I get it.
So y'all ready to hop on to the next one?
Oh, yes.
It's community college. It's no change request in the base, but they have requested.
I'm sorry, are we going through all the nonprofits?
We're doing as we go.
Didn't we already do that? Maybe I'm ahead of myself.
Well, yeah, I mean, you went through the nonprofits when they presented to you.
Right.
So the question is what does the board feel about all those? I don't think the board's weighed in on all those, i.e. like oh, maybe I skipped something here. I'm sorry, folks.
You skip mental health.
Skip mental health. I'm sorry. Contribution to Rockbridge Area Community Services Board. That's formula driven. It's up about $30,000. Okay, here we go. Is that what you were asking about doing? This?
No, mine was more of a procedural question, but that's fine.
Okay. So welfare, court-appointed attorney is up $8,500, and that is, we're just seeing an increased usage. As you can see, 12/31/22, they're already at 4,200 or 4245. So we just doubled that number. So that's an increase. That's our share of what we have to pay there. Social services is down for right now, $61,000. Again, we've sent them the health insurance increase numbers, and I would expect to get something a little bit different back from them. Hopefully not too much extra. Okay, let me finish this one out and I'll get, and program for the aging, request is up $3,000. Habitat up 1,000 and, no requests from Vail.
From who? Oh,
Independent living.
Thank you. Community college, a $1,500 increase to the Dabney Promise Scholarship. They also asked for, let me get the amount,
50,000.
50,000 from ARPA funds, which the finance committee asked me to look at with our balance, assuming we get the grant for, which we will, for the internet broadband expansion. So the board, so I'll be able to report to the finance committee that there is enough funds left over if you want to use it for that purpose in the ARPA.
well, what is the $50,000? Refresh my memory.
They want it for the Dabney, the center they're creating in Univista.
Like a build, a
where
one-time build.
It'd be a one-time contribution.
Workforce Center.
Yeah, it's Workforce Center and they've got significant, they're leveraging significant grant funds and they're going to the localities. They're asking, I think Lexington is a little less than us. I'm thinking they asked for 40,000 from Lexington. Buena Vista's inputs were they gave them a piece of land. They donated a piece of land that they can sell.
That they can sell.
They,
They're not
Buena Vista
using-
donated a piece of land to the project. It's not at the project, but
I just can't imagine what citizens would do if we donated property from, anyway, so that's beside.
But
Okay.
the finance committee said it's a whole, so we'll see what we have.
Right.
The other thing I would caution, or at least, ask you to think about is, I know with the school security information, we had talked about using some of the ARPA funds for that. So you have to calculate that in before you calculate how much, because I don't think it's going to be much left.
Right.
I
because-
think you were asking, unless I was mistaken, ask the school to look at their remaining ARPA funds.
And ours.
Okay.
What was left in ours out of the broadband, after the broadband.
Okay.
So I don't think there's anything left there.
Do we have word on the broadband?
I sent you all an email today.
We don't.
Okay.
Just back to the Dabney request, that was their suggestion.
Right. We didn't,
Was
we didn't
to
say.
use ARPA funds.
Yes.
In fact, I said they shouldn't tell us where to take the money from if we're gonna give them anything.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
remind you that,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's been spoken for.
Understood. I just personally, I hope we can find a way to support that project. But and again, it's a one-time expense, as Ms. Sayers said, for the construction, and they didn't come to us first. They've done a good bit of work to get funds for that. So we'll see where we go as the budget progresses, but hopefully we can find something. It's just my opinion.
For recreation and culture, we did get a budget from Raro, and we're looking at about a $20,000 increase. And there's a $2,500 increase for Boxerwood.
What is Robert?
Raro? What is it for?
What's that for?
I think mostly they're fully staffed now. And that what you had been seeing was not fully staffed. Was that part of it? And then you're also seeing an increase. Remember, the city of Lexington in general, it falls under their budget, and I believe that's an increase in staff costs. Staffing increase, I think they folded in their increase, whatever that is, of 5%. And also,
Health insurance.
and their health insurance. So most of that is the staffing, and they are at full staff currently. So I don't think I'm looking at their budget.
For Parks and Rec,
It also has to do with of course, it's participants, and I think we were a little higher this year in participants based on a couple of very popular programs that were put in.
For Parks and Recs, we have some increase, just more inflationary related to fuel, electricity, and pool supplies. But preschool is level for everything but salaries. Libraries, they've asked for 21,000. I think there's some discussions among Spencer, among Lexington and Buena Vista about that as well. And us, not separate from us, but on their budget request.
Yeah, our understanding was they were looking at level at minimum, at minimum.
Minimum or at maximum?
Minimum. You heard right.
Well,
Yeah, you heard right.
Yeah, that's
well, yeah.
I'm not trying to,
Might
what
be
I'm trying
saying
to
the same thing.
I'm trying not to put words in their
No, I don't want to either, but
moving on to community development. We've combined some line items under, so we got rid of contracted services and all these, and we just rolled them over into just professional services. There's still an increase, and that increase is largely due to technical assistance related to the comp plan, updating the land use regulations.
overall in those three, it's up 20,000.
GIS new laptop is the biggest increase. It has quite a bit of decreases. Rental assistance basically level. And then there might be a future request for full-time assistance, but not in this year's budget. Am I correct on that, Spencer?
On which one?
Rental assistance.
Might be a request for what?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm jumping the gun. Economic development. There was a request for an additional position. And at this time, the Finance Committee has recommended not including that. The transportation grant is up last few years because of COVID funding. It's hasn't required as much from the localities, but that era is over. And so things are returning more to normal. We budget the full amount because it passes through us, but we get reimbursed. Rockbridge, Lexington, Buena Vista each pay 24%, and BMI and VML pay 14%. So a good portion of that shows up on the revenue side. The tourism, or you'll see a big increase in the horse center debt, but that's 100% offset by the revenue because of the increased lodging tax. And tourism program, that's correctly budgeted. So it is down, but that is correctly budgeted for.
Another one of my errors from last year. It was over budgeted last year, and so it's right sized this year. It's down 37,000.
And there's a $2,000 increase to the small development center that's recommended. Moving on, PSA, that's just debt or debt service support. I guess follows our debt schedule. Other public utilities, same thing. It's just our debt service. National Bridge Soil and Water Conservation District. And I'm sure it's going to be. It looks. We didn't get their budget until after the board had adopted their budget
Last year.
That's probably talking with staff. That seems to be what typically happens. We fund 25% of the director's salary and benefits. And all those other costs, the other two employees and 75% of the directors is shows up on it, is reimbursed. Cooperative extension, they're up based on their salary increases.
That's increases through Virginia Tech.
That's making 10% on increase to the revenue sharing payment to Lexington. Largely that's up because our lodging and meals and sales is up, and also because we got some new taxes like the cigarette and emissions tax.
It's moving. Yeah,
Because our assessed valuation went up.
yeah. When your assessed valuation went up, I forget exactly what it is, but it was around.
We were close.
Yeah, we were getting close at 200 and or 2.3. I think it was around 2.3
We were right
million.
on it.
And now it's a ratio of our assessed value. So now the level moved up higher. It's no longer 2.8.
There's a cap at each assessment.
Right.
Fringe benefits level. These are our consulting and fees for various human resources stuff. Debt service it shows down, but pretty much it's all level. That's just what our payment schedule is going to be. Same with other debt.
Where's the interest on? Obviously, it wouldn't be on the revenue. I mean, I don't recall seeing it on the revenue side.
That wouldn't be,
Interest earnings on the revenue side.
there wouldn't be anything on the
No,
revenue
I
side.
know, but I didn't see it.
Now you do see under revenue the QSCB. That might be what you're thinking about.
Well, I assume that we're investing.
Well, that went back to Chairman McDaniel's question about what interest rate we're calculating in the whole discussion. I've got a
A note to follow up with.
note to
today.
follow up with the treasurer.
It's there. It's there.
It is there.
Because I had the same question as David.
Refunds.
Up 500.
We put in $500 for that auto tag. Someone loses their tag. Whatever that was. And for transfers, again, as Spencer had pointed out, budgeting, we can budget and seek appropriations as projects come online for the capital and capital purchases. The school is increasing, has requested 1.2 million. Their debt right now is actually going to be down.
And that's using 7% as well for them.
We budget our max, yes.
Yes.
Like I say, we'll get the full categorical estimate of need next Tuesday, the official, but it's, as far as I know, it's not changing.
Mhm.
Dr. Thompson told me today the number's the same.
Okay, this chairman asked what we needed, what each of, for me, before we start talking about what we have to cut, I guess what I would like to see is the personal property equalized so that we kind of see how much revenue that, you know, we would be adding into our income stream revenue. I would also like to, we had talked about the loss in decal revenue, being able to add that back into our personal property tax. So maybe a scenario where that perhaps could be done. I would like to see staffing increases at the 7 all the way down to the 3. I mean, clearly there's a COLA, there's an increase that our employees absolutely need, but would like to see, you know, our budget at those different numbers, including the school budget. I don't feel comfortable when we give some sectors 7% and others 3%. I think mostly we would be looking for the same amount across the board, would we? Is that everybody's thought? Or is that, no? What do you think?
No, I've
That,
and the school, I can believe the school's document that I saw, they did give several
they did.
percentage,
He didn't with
scenarios.
ours, with our employees.
I see.
And that might, if the schools are giving 5, would we then consider across the board at 5?
I would agree. I'd like to start there. Yes, ma'am. See what that looks like.
And then the other thing is, could we have a list of all the one-time things to consider that perhaps we want those paid? Not necessarily that we're going to say yes to them, but if we do, that they would come out of our, not out of our general budget. Would that be right? So with those things, I have no idea how far we are from $2.5 million.
Right.
Dave, did you have anything? No.
Not this time.
My biggest takeaway, and I appreciate Ashton or Ms. Harrison, Mr. Suter, and the Finance Committee providing a very good detailed update. You know, when you look at revenues are up 2.71%, you think that's a good year. The problem is expenses are up 7.2%. And to me, that's where your focus needs to be, cutting expenses, getting it down. You know, as if we talked a little bit, you know, interest rates are up, inflation's up, stocks aren't doing so well for people. I just don't think that this is a year we really need to be in the citizens' pockets. I think we need to do what we have to do to trim as much as we possibly can to cut expenditures down. And not saying that we shouldn't give raises or shouldn't look at, but you know, 7% is pretty healthy. And I realize our employees, our staff do an exceptional job and are well deserving of that and plus more, as well as the teachers and everything like that. But, you know, unfortunately, the way the state calculates those, the local portion of those salaries it ends up, 75% of it falls on the locality to fund. And unfortunately, I just don't think that we can support that. That's my personal thing. And maybe there's some wiggle room in the revenues, that you can, when you go back and look at the trends and different things. But when you're up 2.71%, you think you're doing pretty good. The problem is the expenses are up so much. And with the real estate tax, I mean, I do think you equalize that and you leave it alone. And that's my personal point, because there are going to be, and I'll speak for myself as a homeowner in Rockbridge County, mine went up 40%. So even when you equalize the tax rate, my real estate taxes are going up. I'm going to see an increase in what I pay. I realize some people are going down and it's across the board. I get that, but I think the equalization needs to stay at that amount. I understand personal property values are down. There might be some room there. But again, I don't think you go from 380 back to 450 where it was. I think maybe you look at what going to $4, what's that do for you? What maybe 410.
Absolutely.
Because again, it's just a tough year on our citizens with everything else that they've got going on and the prices of everything. And I just don't see how we can impose that on our citizens.
I am concerned that the tax rate and what we all feared early on, that the taxes for the people that own houses in the 200 to 400 range, that going up so high, whereas you own $1 million home, you're going to be, I mean, it's still gone up, but a far less of an impact. The land use, that was one benefit to our local farmers, is that the land use taxes will be going down. Unfortunately, a lot of our land is owned by out-of-state people, and it's equalized in their benefit. And I too bad we can't fix that. And so that our local farmers can benefit from that, but state doesn't allow us to do that.
In our reassessment, did land values increase or just homes or buildings?
I don't know what the commissioner has seen. The people who I've talked to about it have said their land assessments went down a little bit, but their improvement cost went up.
It depends. I think some.
I can answer that. Yeah, the land value went from 1,357,000,000 to 1.5 billion.
Say that again. I'm sorry, Ashton. How much did we lose there?
Just say basically how much it went up.
Right. Well,
Oh.
Okay, so it went up, but the tax rate is going down. And so when with the land use, they're going to be paying landowners within land use will be paying less money. Is that correct? Is that correct, Ashton? Is that what's happened?
Yes, land use has, let me pull that up.
I'll catch that if you just want to pull that up. Yes, if it's in land use and the tax rate goes from 74 to 61, it's still assessed at the same amount, whether it's at 74 or 61 per acre for the tax. So if it's at 61, the actual bill will go down.
We don't have just that piece of the equalization, do we? Information of what was lost in that revenue.
I'll tell you what,
Yes.
can we, I hate to do this right here, right now. Can we get that information to you all?
I agree. It's hard
Rather than
to,
digging through it
Yeah.
here on the screen.
I don't want to get a wrong number and then get that at
It's right
everyone's.
there.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
focus on that. Later.
We're rapid firing on Ashton here. Like 4 questions.
Can we tell a constitutional officer who has state employees that are going to be funded at 7% that he can't fund at 7%?
No, I don't think you can tell, I mean, it's up to the constitutional officer, but,
That's exactly right.
Exactly right.
but it's the positions that we fund is the question.
But do you
Not with the
realize
company.
the friction and problem that's going to
I'm
cause?
not saying it's right, I'm just pointing it out.
So they can see the discussion.
That is another unfortunate position that the Commonwealth puts the locality in with comp board funding some positions and then not completely funding some positions and then saying that you have to have a certain number of positions, then the locality completely funding some positions.
And the states will tell a deputy that you are not a state employee, you're not a county employee, you are an employee of a constitutional officer, which position is created in the state constitution. So if that doesn't create or make it a state position, I don't know. But that's what I'm comfortable to tell you. I feel like that's going to cause a lot of problems with them, especially with sheriff's officers, the number of employees that they have.
Well, I would say, you know, we got some more work to do.
Right.
We're not done yet. Yeah, I hear you, Mr. Dayton. I just don't want everybody to get
But David, I
too
also
set on one
understand
path yet.
what you're saying, too, as far as
Yeah, I'm not, I mean, the finance committee can work on, bring back. to
And I don't think everyone needs to get the same percentage. I mean, for example, I'll use the sheriff's department. Now, I think all deputies are too, but if you have a secretary,
well,
does that position has to get the same percent of a road?
yeah,
Does the sheriff get the same percentage of everybody else? If you look at schools, should principals and superintendents and central office have to get the same percentage as the teachers? You know, some years you can, because 7% of $100,000 is a lot more than 7% of $42,000. You know, so in the perfect world, it'd be great if we could, but I think
We're all buying
sometimes you
the same
can't.
groceries. Right.
I guess so.
right, we're all buying the same groceries, but if I make 100,000 now, I'm getting 107. If I'm making 42, now I'm getting, you know, a $28,000 raise instead of it. So
I appreciate you all discussing this because it really helps because, we're on the first stage and, this initial thoughts and I think it assists staff and I'm hoping to assist the finance committee and getting everybody's thoughts on this thing.
Y'all have provided us 2 different options with the schedule. What is, do you need something from us on that?
Yes.
I can go over that.
Thank you.
And I've actually got it. I guess not difficult to explain, but it might be for me. So again, basically in a reassessment year, we're required to give you to give an additional 30-day notice if the effective real estate tax rate is to be increased. So meaning the effective real estate tax rate, if you were to equalize it at 61 cents and then go up from there, more
1%.
than 1%, within 1%.
1% of 61 cents. 1%. What is that? Would
Of
that
the-
be 61 point? What are we? What are you allowed to do?
I think it's of the overall tax.
Ashton's calculated.
You have to look at the,
So
Yeah, 100. yes, you can do 101%, but my sense was we wanted to keep, I mean, we could go out to 4 decimals on the tax, assess people 61.37. But
Yep.
you, as a board, you want to
Well, 1% would
keep it just even, right? 61 cents.
be 61, so it would be 61.
Right.
Right.
I think if you're going up, if you want to stay on round numbers, then, and you want it to go up, I think you would want to go ahead and,
I don't think anybody wants to go up. I get. No
I'm
one
not-
wants to go up. It's just if we were having to, but if we did, it would be higher than the 1%. We'd have to advertise.
yes.
That's what you're
I
saying.
think if you go up at all, in as far as in just a straight penny,
Mhm.
then I think you should. All right, so backing into that, we have to look out in the future. If you were considering that, you have to give a 30-day notice as opposed to the normal budget public hearing notice. So that pushes things out a little bit as far as the schedule. So you look out in the future, the thing we start with is the actual due date for payment of real estate taxes, which is currently by code set to June 5th. So then we kind of back into it there. So we presented you all with two general options that are in front of, are they in front of them right now, Ashton?
Yes.
Okay. So option 1 keeps the budget schedule as we currently have it advertised. And there's 2 sub options under that. All right. So option 1A is just to keep the status quo, keeps the current budget schedule, and can be used if there is absolutely, no appetite for consideration of an increase to the effective rate of the real estate tax above 61 cents. Option 1B, the second one there, if the board determines it wants to advertise an increase into the effective real estate rate. If you want to stay on track within the current budget schedule adoption, you need to decide the maximum amount you'd want to do by March 16th. Okay, so that is
That's coming up.
coming up.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's basically next Thursday. So you'd want to do that by March 16th so that staff could post the appropriate notices. And this would also involve posting all revenue sources. So you'd also need to make determination on personal property tax as well at the same time. Option 2, if the board is not yet prepared to make a decision by March 16th, but you want to reserve the option to increase the effective tax rate above 61, 2 things would need to occur. First, you'd need to make that final decision by April the 10th, no later than April the 10th. And you need to extend the tax date by ordinance. And Mr. Votto and the Treasurer's Office has indicated that if this were the case, probably the best date to extend it to would be July 10th. That would provide enough time to have 30 days for her to get the notices out and give folks plenty of time so that they're not getting the notice in the mail and then a week later having to run in and pay it.
You say July 10th?
July 10th.
So when would the people get their bills out?
It would be early June. I'm sorry. Yeah, the first week of June.
And they'd have 30 days more. Well, I don't see where we need to be in such a rush. because there's still so many unknowns. And why would we tie our hands until we get some answers to those questions? So I would suggest that we go with option 2. And it gives us time to do our due diligence and produce the best budget we can with the most information we can get, rather than after the next week saying this is what the tax rate is going to be. Now,
We can always come down.
now
from
fix
it,
a
but-
budget to make it work. So
I would,
that's just a suggestion right now. That's my opinion. I'll make a motion when people are ready, but
Mr. Lewis, what do you?
I was just gonna say, we do have, the board generated a bunch of questions. There's a finance committee meeting Wednesday. And then that would still give us a chance to come back and make this decision before March 16th.
We have a board meeting next Monday, the 13th.
Yeah, we've been meeting, yeah, we're meeting every Monday.
So we could make that decision
So
on the
I'm
13th.
sort of splitting that. I'm proposing another option, in how we approach this, but it would be, hopefully we can have some answers to some of the questions that were asked tonight. We've got some directions. Finance committee can take a look at that. And maybe we have more information on the board meeting the 13th to decide on that particular issue. Does that work with the
To
timeline
your
here?
point, what I've got here is the finance committee will be meeting later this week. The next scheduled update for the board on the existing schedule is March 20th, the following Monday, in this room. However, depending on the budget schedule discussions here, we may be coming back to you sooner at your regular meeting on March 13th.
We do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
We can put it on the calendar. We've got a meeting.
let's take another week. I mean, you know how this stuff changes just so fast. So
First Monday.
right. But once we if we set something on the 16th, there's no going back.
I understand. I
Uh,
and because I agree with the chairman too. I don't want to do that. The real estate, I would like to equalize the real estate rate and have that be where it is. But I do understand all the needs that we have, and I don't want to today remove that option. If we can still do it in the timeline, do it next week. I mean, it just seems to make sense.
Next Monday, the 13th.
About the work session.
Don't we have the Blue Ridge Resource Authority at 4:30? 4:30.
It is.
yes, I'm sorry.
We do.
Yeah.
I haven't seen estimated what that meeting's gonna be like as far as the agenda.
I have not either. My assumption is that you all be looking budget in that meeting as well.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it would be during the meeting or if you prefer to do it at the end.
You got a closed session probably scheduled.
Because we'll have to do it because
We have a close
the
session.
16th will be rolling upon us. I mean, I think Monday, we're going to have to decide what option we're going to.
That's why that was my proposal. Yes, sir. I don't disagree.
I don't disagree with you either, but I'm saying if we're not ready, then it doesn't hurt anything to go with option 2. This gives us more time.
Actually, what I didn't think about is with option 2, April 10th is the deadline. If you came to April 10th and decided not to do it, I think you're still on track.
Decided not to do what?
Consider a tax increase.
Well, but no, we would be not on, then we wouldn't have to advertise, but we would need to advertise if we decided to do it. right?
Well, yeah,
That's
and,
the
and again, I don't, let us look at it. We come back to you on Monday. And we'll talk about it in finance committee.
I do
The other
have,
thing, not to cloud, I'm sorry, Mr. Lewis, but not to cloud the picture anymore, but we're still waiting on state information. And I know in the past, when
the state has not been good at meeting their deadlines, we have extended our schedule somewhat to accommodate so that we knew the state information. So I guess my question is, this 16th is firm in this particular schedule. How firm is the whole schedule, depending upon when we get the state information?
Well, in any of these schedules, unless the state, the state might not adopt the budget until June. I don't know.
We're not meeting it, right?
But we're still bound by,
We're still bound.
But once we
as
advertise,
frustrating as that is.
then we can't, we can come down, but you can't go up if you needed to. And that was my, so the schedule one is like on Thursday the 16th, you're saying, okay, this is the range we're gonna do. And we advertise it, then we can't say, oops, we didn't have this information. We really needed to go higher. You can't, we can always go lower. So that's all I'm saying is before you give yourself a range, you want the most information, make sure you're putting out. Totally agree, totally agree, but by saying you're not, it gives all of us guardrails that we can't exceed,
Oh, yeah,
so,
yeah.
so you're, I mean.
And I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
If you say, if everyone here says we're gonna stick to 61 cents, that's my guardrail and we'll do what we have to make the recommendations we have to do to meet that.
I would really like to see the answers to those questions first, to see what range, are we a million after those things at 5% or 4% increase? I just need to have that information.
What day is the finance committee meeting?
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
yeah. And the Wednesday at 1.
That's my understanding.
Yes.
So I would just recommend, I'm sorry, Mr. Lewis, I'll let you go here just a second.
I gotta get it out eventually. Yeah.
I would just say, for Ms. Ayers, Mr. Day, and myself, questions, comments, concerns, you need to get with the 2 finance committee members as soon as possible. If you got any other questions after tonight. So they're meeting on Wednesday, and then, obviously feel free to reach out after that, with the questions, but you need to come Monday night and we hear an update, and then we need to make a decision.
Where are we going to hear the update? It's going to be in our regular meeting.
I think it's gonna have to, because you're not gonna have time.
Well, how long will it take to give an update? I mean, I'm thinking BRA is usually done in 30 minutes.
Well, can we have the questions that we ask? Can we get that as an email?
Oh, yeah, we can,
We're gonna get all of those things as an email.
we'll do the best we can, but,
That's a lot of work between now and next week.
well, we're gonna have to get that work done between now and Wednesday, the finance committee, I think. And one thing, I'm not sure I'm gonna have the jail piece of it finalized yet. I mean, we've got some information, but I've got meetings back to back to back, basically through the middle of the day Thursday.
Well, I
So,
would think we'd make some significant progress, the finance committee, before next Monday. I mean, when we sit down Wednesday, I think we've got some opinions that we can look at some things and say, especially expenditures, here, and here. And look at some revenues and see if they're where they need to be, but it won't be finalized, but I think we can hopefully make a little dent in it.
So my concern is I Spencer, when you were describing some of the schedule and the procedures that go into advertising when we advertise, I heard some things that I had not heard before. Is there some way to get us the exact rules that we're playing by here when what we advertise and when we advertise? Is that in the state code that you can send a
that's no
link
problem
to
at all.
or something? Yeah. All right. I just like,
Yeah.
I just, from my perspective, I want to sit down and read that too, just to make sure that I understand that.
In a nutshell, you have to advertise you have to show the existing rate and how much money that produces, how much a new rate produces, the percent difference, and your total revenue. Separate from the property tax, you have to show what your estimated revenue is over the previous year. So,
I think
Our
we're gonna
best.
need to get it to them to read.
I'll send a sample notice from last time.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. We can send you a notice from the last. It might help put it into context and perspective from the last time we had a reassessment year.
Well, the other, we ran into this the COVID year, didn't we? We delayed and delayed until April, certainly into April. I
Right,
wonder
but
what-
it wasn't a reassessment year. That's what those that came,
That's what,
the 30-day came into it.
It's an extra layer of requirements.
Right.
all right, so we'll send everybody the code section.
I think the sample notice would be better.
Both would be fine
yeah,
if they're
I'll put
easy to locate.
Was that your question? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off 2 or 3 times.
It's all right. That is my question.
Is there any other board discussion? Any other questions? Any other comments? Mr. Harrison, Mr. Suter, you have anything else?
I don't think so. We got a huge gap to close.
All right. If nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
A second? All right, Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. Thank you, everybody, for their hard work.